Hi guys. Hello. I'm just going to sit and wait for a few of you to come in. So this will be an Ask Mrs. M session for the 9990 syllabus for paper 2 that's coming up. All right. Just in case you're watching this at a different time. All right, I'm going to get a few items while you guys kind of roll in and just start to pop your questions up in the chat box and give me some content to go through, okay? All right, so when I was teaching ACE Psych, I usually had my students make a game board right before the exam. So they were basically creating their own question cards. Hi guys, Claire, how are you? I'm so glad that I'm able to come on here for you guys right before your exam. Okay, so I'm going to describe 3 types of questionnaires, okay? 3 types of questionnaires. So we have a structured questionnaire. This is pre-prepared questions and always the same questions in the same exact order, okay? An unstructured questionnaire, they're asking depending on the direction in which the discussion is going. Now, a semi-structured questionnaire, this is basically some structured and some unstructured. And this can also be true for interviews. So you can have a structured and an unstructured interview and a semi-structured interview. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you got an 82%. Woohoo! Yay! Okay, so does paper 2 focus on content review in class such as Canley, Schechter, and Singer? Okay, so paper 2, you're going to notice in paper 2 the themes of basically what the 12 studies covered. So things like sleep disorders and emotions and false memories, those kind of theories and issues might show up and be present, but what you're going to see is hypothetical studies with names of people that you've never heard of before. Okay, and this is just hypothetical research methods. You're basically going to be presented some person named Javi is going to want to study his classmates and he wants to create a questionnaire. And they might say something like, what is a problem with the reliability of how Javier is collecting his sample? Okay, so you're going to need to know the strengths and the weaknesses of these vocab words. So it's a majority, it's all research methods, okay? If you have the book, it's studying all research methods. If you have, if you're in the Google Classroom, go study the vocab, study the strengths and weaknesses. I have those somewhere around here as well. I basically create index cards, okay, and they have the strengths and the weaknesses of qualitative, quantitative data, field experiments, all the vocab. All right. Everything that I would have a card for that has vocab has a card for strengths and weaknesses. All right. Does the 10-point question have to be like one big paragraph or can it kind of be bulleted? Okay, yes, you can bullet point. You can bullet point. You can, if you are a global type of thinker, you need to make boxes and kind of like organize it a different way. Maybe you want to like make a graph and say, okay, I know I need to talk about the methods here. I need to talk about the procedures here. I need to talk about this here. Pre-label your boxes so maybe you can, if you need to jump around, okay, there are some learners that are like that, okay. It was kind of difficult for me to sit there, guys, and do it in a linear way for you because I'm a global type of thinker. So like I really wanted to like space it out and make it into like pictures and blocks and have arrows everywhere and That's the way that my brain thinks. So it's okay if you do that, as long as you try to organize it some way. I'll tell you though, if it's more organized and type of structured, it'll be so much easier for the grader to grade it. Um, I'm just going to say that as a teacher myself, when I'm grading papers or when I was grading papers, like think about this, guys. Grading papers is psychology. There's been studies done on teachers that grade papers. For example, like studies show if you teachers are harder on like the majority, the 1/3 of the papers they grade than they are the last 2/3. They're also harder on the first couple questions on a test than they are the last couple questions. It's psychology. So I mean, if you can organize your answers in bullets, then yes, it will be so much easier for the grader to like go through and see. If you can label who, what, when, where, how, it'll be easy for them to go look in those spots to say, "Oh, did they mention this? Oh yeah, it's right here in the when in the how section." Okay? So organization is really, it's I'm not saying it's going to give you more points, but it will enable the ease of more points, if that makes sense. Okay? All right, let me look at the next question. Do I have to mention inter-rater reliability for section C? If you have observers or you have raters, someone who is grading something, someone who is rating something, someone who is observing something, I'm going to say it's always better to have two people. Now, here's a hint though. A lot of that question, that 4-point question, evaluation question afterwards, a lot of that that question is usually a weakness, first of all, and that question usually has something to do with the procedure, which is reliability or validity. Now, I'm going to tell you the secret, okay? If you put that you have two raters, that's going to make your reliability really high. So you might be left in that last question saying something like, "Oh my gosh, I don't really know what to answer. I worked really hard to make that study as sound and running well as possible." Go back and change it to just having one rater. And then in your next question, you can say you should have had two raters, and two raters would have given you more reliability and so forth. Okay. Go back and make that tweak so you can answer that question. Like, think about it. If even if they didn't give you that one extra point that you would have gotten for saying that, you're gaining 4 points in the question afterwards. Okay. So it's worth it. It's so worth it. And honestly, not having two raters isn't going to make or break a study. It just makes it better if you have two raters. Okay. Would I say paper two is easier? You know what? I've looked at the statistics, and when I started to teach, I saw the teacher in front of me. The students had an easier time with paper two. So I worked really, really hard to get them. I mean, it makes sense because you're studying research methods. You need to understand research methods in order to understand the studies. But the paper one is basically all of the studies and memorizing the details and the data, where paper two is applying what you know to a more in a more evaluative general type of way. So basically the higher ups kind of know, oh, they know what they're talking about because they can take this research methods concept, reliability, and apply it to a generic study that we just made up. Okay. So for a design study, can our answer be like yours, the video you made about the children doing different activities, or does it need to be in paragraph form? It does not um, can it be like mine, or does it need to be in paragraph form? I think I just answered that. Does not need to be in paragraph form. However, your mind thinks I would do that. Okay. It's hard for me to like look at all the space that I have on the piece of paper and be like, oh my gosh, am I going to run out of space? I honestly felt like I ran out of space when I was writing that, and I wanted to write so much more. But like, you guys need to time yourself when you're doing that. Don't, if you start to go over 25 minutes, really decide what you're writing. Is it worth it? What you're going over that is 25 minutes to write. and maybe you can make a bullet point of what you want to write. And if you have time, come back afterwards and write that in. Okay. All right. Okay, so Bella, you just got here. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to like this, guys. If you like me coming on here, I can do this for, I know A3 is coming up. I know A4 is coming up. I don't have a lot of content, but I can be here and be of service to you in any way possible, okay? So you can do any bullet points. You can put acronyms in on the side, anything like that. So if you are thinking who, what, when, where, how, controls, ethics, if you're thinking that and they say start and you open your paper, go right to the end and just write that in the margin and then start in the front if you want to. I would suggest trying to read that question at the end, because maybe having a fresh mind and not having so many different ideas in your head by completing the entire test and being kind of exhausted at the end and trying to create the study, go to the end first, look at the question, and if you get any ideas right away, jot them down. If you are going blank for, I'm going to say, at least 3 minutes and it's causing you anxiety or stress, forget it, jump ship, stop what you're doing, go to the beginning of the test and just start doing the test like normal. Okay. You didn't waste any time there, because I'm telling you, don't spend more than 5 minutes of blank time, of blankness. Okay. If you think of any ideas, go ahead and jot them down. Maybe you're the type of person that needs a couple of ideas before you start. The only reason I tell you to get to that last question first is because it's a cluster of 10 points that it's almost easier to get than all these little tiny questions that, if you get A wrong, then you'll get B wrong type of thing. Okay. So let's see. Any more questions? Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining. Also, since you guys are here, if anyone's taking A3 and A4, just kind of throw out when those the exam dates are. I don't know if it just keeps a week after and a week after. If it is, awesome. Can I go over animal ethics? Yes, I can go over animal ethics. Let me specifically grab my animal ethics just so I don't forget anything. I actually think it's in my old book. This is like the 9698 book, but I think it has a section on animals where the other book did not. Let's see. The use of children and animals. Okay, so specifically for ethics, it says there are ethical guidelines and rules for the use of animals in psychological research. The main ones are the following: the law. Psychologists must work within the law about protecting animals. So, I mean, you don't want to do any physical harm to them, just like humans. Okay, you don't want to do any physical harm, and this also includes things like depriving them of food or saturating them with food. All right. You want to be smart about your study if you are using animals. And thank you for the dates. I see the dates in there. Thank you. If you, let's say you need to use food as a reward. Okay. Now, some people might say deprive the animal of food. That way, food is a good reward system, right? Oh, they're going to do what we want because they want food. Unfortunately, animal ethics, you cannot deprive the animal of food and use that as a reward system, because that's like one of the major needs. So it's going to skew the data tremendously, because it's almost like at that point, the animal doesn't really even care what it's doing. It's not really learning. It's just wants the food. Okay. Let's see. Number of animals. So this should be kept to the minimum amount if you are doing, okay, so in last syllabus, there was a study done on kittens. It was called the kitten carousel, and it was done on perspective. This is not in this study, this syllabus, guys, but they used 4 kittens. Okay. They didn't they didn't need 20 kittens. All right. This is what this is talking about. If you can get away with using 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 animals at the least, okay? I think Yamamoto only used 5 animals. Okay? They didn't go out and try to get, 180 chimpanzees, okay? Like Schechter and Singer has 184 um males, college students in there, okay? We're not going to get huge populations like that with animals. The next is social environment. So a social species should be kept together with their own animals, and non-species should not be kept together. So basically, if you have two different types of animals in your study, don't cage them together. If you have social types of animals that need to be caged together, please do so. If they're animals that don't necessarily need to be together, and I'm just going to throw this one out there because it's coming to me, but like bulls, they'll fight, or like, animals that shouldn't be together. I, I don't know. I don't have anything off the top of my head right now, but in whatever the case may be, if they're two, one animal maybe is an aggressive animal and the other isn't, or something like that. Okay, don't harm any of the animals in any way by the way that you cage them or you socialize them or in their environment. The last is caging, and housing and caging should not lead to overcrowding or increased stress. So you want to make sure that the environment is comforting. It's not like they're like um if they're an animal that needs to lay down and you're putting them in wire cages that have no bottoms on them for hours and hours a day, or maybe they don't get any light or they don't get any break from the light or something like that. You don't want to have 100 fish in a tiny little fish tank just for the sake of saving space, those types of things. Okay. A strength of studying animals is that we can conduct research on the animal that we cannot conduct on humans ethically. Okay. And a weakness is due to the differences in physiological and psychological makeups of animals and humans. It can be difficult to generalize from animal studies to humans. Basically, the only thing that I can say for certain that we can generalize is the chimpanzees have been previously linked to having a similar brain or mindset as a 3-year-old child, which is kind of why Yamamoto has to do with theory of mind. And we talk about theory of mind developing between the age of 3 and 4 years old. And so does Baron Cohen with the Sally Ann test. So that's all kind of part of that. Okay. All right. Let me look back at some of these questions to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Okay. Can I go over measuring data such as correlations, standard deviations? Yeah, let me just look in the book to make sure that I cover all of them, because in the past years, you have had to I know you're gonna have to label, you're probably gonna have to label an X and Y axis. Okay. So the Y axis, which is the long, okay, it goes up and down. That is going to be your dependent variable, and this is going to be your independent variable. Your this is your x-axis, the one that runs horizontal. Your x-axis is your um, your independent variables. And the way that you can think, the best way that I always try to remember this is, if you're having independent variables, it's having different categories of independent variables, right? So in that sense, you're creating a bar chart, and a bar chart kind of goes up in this way. And we know that the higher they go, we're measuring the height. Okay. We are comparing and measuring the height of bar charts. So therefore, the measurement will occur on the side, and the categories will occur on the bottom. So our independent variables in the x-axis, and our dependent variable is in the y-axis. Okay. Let me just look again for measurement. You might have to think about mean, median, or mode. Okay, you can't use them all. Um, they're not mutually exclusive, or they are, in the sense that they um sometimes using mode is the best. Sometimes using mean is the best. Sometimes you can't use the mean. What if you would just have categories, and the categories just occurred one time, and you're just looking for the one that occurred the most often, not necessarily the mean average of all the categories. Okay, so let me just go through this really quickly for those who need kind of like a visual kind of recap on measurement or measures of central tendency. So, mean, median, and mode. All right, so mean is the average. So I'm going to add everything up and I'm going to divide by the total number, and that's going to give me the average. That happens a majority of the time in almost all laboratory experiments that deal with statistical numbers. Okay. If you have mode, that is the one that occurs the most often. Okay, MO, most often occurring. And sometimes we need to have the mode in order to, um, maybe there's let's for example, if we have test scores and we have a majority of the class scores in the 90s, but we have two students who score in like the 30s or something, and maybe they weren't in class for those that part of the study, but those scores are still going to affect the mean. Okay, if you use mean, those really, really, really low scores are going to drag the mean down. So we may not want to use the mean. Maybe we want to use the mode, which score was most often occurred, and that was a 95, and that's a better kind of measure of central tendency of the average person or what they did. Okay, the last one is median. Now I think of median like the median in the road. Okay, the median in the road is right in the middle of the road, and when you line the numbers up from the smallest to the largest, you were looking for the number that was right smack dab in the middle. Now, just old school count. Okay, line them up and count. That's how you would do it. If there are two numbers that end up in the middle and that's even, okay, there's no middle number, then you actually use the mean and you add those two up and divide by that number. So, I mean, a lot of the time I've seen it's the same number. So there you go. All right. As I look for other measures, let's see. I know that we've had to explain standard deviations. We've had to explain correlations. So quickly, I'll explain correlations to you. Oh, my chat is going crazy. Awesome, guys. Okay. Okay. So the correlation, I might have to go back to some of the comments and questions in the live chat, guys, but I'm going to go over correlations really quickly because that's really important for you to know. Okay, so correlations do not imply causations. That's an amazing phrase for you to remember, and it basically means when two things are correlated, it does not mean that A is causing B or B is causing A to occur. Here is an example. If I did let's say a questionnaire on the students and their household use of nicotine and other smoking, uh, I don't know, vaping and things like that. And I find that there is a positive correlation between students who vape and parents who smoke cigarettes. Now, parents who smoke cigarettes, I'm not saying that because the parent smoked cigarettes, that's causing their child to vape. And I'm not saying that because the child vape, it's causing their parent to smoke cigarettes. Okay. There just happens to be a relationship and it happens to be positive, meaning it moves in the same direction at the same momentum. Okay. Now, if something is a negative correlation, think of like polarity of magnets. They go in the complete opposite direction. Okay. For example, the weather. Now, the hotter the weather gets, the less clothes you tend to wear, right? So, now the colder it gets, the drop in temperature, less heat. Okay. The more clothes we put on. Now, that is kind of like a negative correlation. As one increases, the other decreases. Okay, so understanding positive and negative correlations, and that one doesn't mean that the other is causing, it just means that there is some type of relationship, and it could be a million other factors or variables that are causing those two things to link and occur. Okay, there's some pretty crazy correlations in research that we've found in all aspects of oh my gosh, deep stuff, guys, deep stuff. I'll get into that in another video. Okay. Um, let's see if you're doing standard deviation. when they talk about standard deviation, that just means how far you are away from the mean. You want to be one standard deviation away from the mean. And that has to do with the bell curve. Okay. Standard deviation is, if you're looking at something that is graphed already, graphed, and however the chart is graphed out, one notch, however it's spaced out, one notch is a standard deviation. And if you have an x axis there, and you have your bell curve, however many standard deviations it says is how many standard deviations you are away from the mean average of the entire group of collective, the average score. So you want to be as close to the average score as possible. Okay. If it's within one standard deviation away from the mean, if it says it like that, then that means it's a very significant data. Okay. Okay. Let me go back a little bit. Will paper 2 ask any questions relating to the 12 studies? No, it's not going to ask any questions related to the 12 studies. It shouldn't. You might find themes related to the 12 studies, and you might, they might mention one of the studies, but a majority of it is hypotheticals. Okay. So a histogram is used for frequency data, showing the frequency of data. It's a histogram does not have spaces in between the categories because it's fluent. It's more likely to happen like a repeated measures design, where a bar chart or bar graph is more likely to happen in independent measures design, where we have individual groups. I'm not saying it always happens in repeated measures, but it's more likely to show trends that way. Okay. Okay. You don't need to know how standard deviation is found. You do not need to know how to correlate standard deviation. You don't need you don't need to know how to calculate standard deviation. You won't need to know how to calculate p-values. The only thing you need to know how to calculate is the measures of central tendency. I'm trying to get into specifically the part of the book that talks about the p-value, because it was on last year. I don't know. Okay, let me see if it's in here. It's actually not even in this book. Well, standard deviations are, but okay. So if you are asked what a standard deviation does or a standard deviation is, it tells us the spread of a group. Groups with scores that are more spread out have larger standard deviations. Groups with closely cluttered scores have smaller standard deviations. When the standard deviations of two groups are similar, this means that they have a similar variation around the mean. Okay, so that's where I'm saying that we want to have a really, our standard deviation wants to be as close to the mean as possible. How far do we deviate away from the mean? Okay. I think that's pretty good. I don't think that you're going to be asked more than a 2-point question for what a standard deviation is. Let's see. Okay, so I'm reading a question, something that Jacob kind of put in here and brought up. Now, I'm going to say that in a sense, a histogram and a bar chart don't differ of where the independent variable and the dependent variables are. Okay, on the y-axis, you're still going to have, that's the y-axis, the tall one, you're still going to have your dependent variable, and on the x-axis, you'll always have your independent variable. Okay, specifically, I'll read this for you here. A bar chart is used when the data when the data are in separate categories rather than on a continuous scale. Bar charts are therefore used for the totals of data collected in named categories for all measures of central tendency. So we're looking for mean, medians, and modes, and we are looking at individual categories, and they will have spaces in between. Now, histograms can be used to show the pattern in a whole data set, where this is basically continuous data, okay? It can be used to illustrate the distribution of a set of scores. It does, just like the, just like the bar chart, they're both x-axis is the independent variable. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Okay, so just like Jacob was saying, in the histogram, the okay, you are completely right. In the histogram, you are charting the independent variable on the x-axis. Okay, the dependent variable is on the x-axis on the histogram, and that's because you're plotting the frequency of the points. All right, and the x. So where a bar chart is moving upward, okay, the measurement is moving upward. So your measurement is going to be on the y-axis. If you have a histogram, your dependent variable is going to be on the x-axis and your independent variable is going to be on the y-axis. And this is because you're showing frequency of data as frequency is moving. You're showing how data is continuous, how it's continuously moving this direction, okay? I'm so sorry for that. Jacob, thank you so much for putting that comment in there. And I'm sorry for generalizing the y-axis and the x-axis information on the independent dependent variable to both histograms and bar charts. That was incorrect of me. I am so sorry, guys. All right. I hope by me making this mistake, you actually remember it more so. Okay. Please remember it more so. And thank you, Jacob, again, for putting that in there. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to read some of the comments to see where we're at. Is there a format for designing question, or we just have to write it like you wrote it? Okay, so there is no format. I simply try to write who, what, when, where, how, because it's easy for me to remember. And then I always try to remember to put in the variables, any controls, and the ethics. Okay. Usually, if I can hit those marks, there's a good chance I'm going to get 8 to 10 points. And then I always want to make sure that I'm going to operationally define any behaviors or variables that I'm using or I'm talking about. If I say mowing a lawn, I'm going to define what that looks like. If I say the word happy, I'm going to define what happy looks like. Okay. Happy is kind of subjective. So get to define. Maybe we don't use happy. Maybe we use the word laughter, okay, in substitute for happy, something like that. Okay, think about that too. Are the behaviors that you're looking at, are they subjective behaviors or are they objective behaviors? You want to make sure, and this is about observations. Okay, if you're looking at things like that. All right. Sampling. Let's see. So yeah, they might. Okay, Jacob's question, sampling, would they be like, what's the strengths and weaknesses of random sampling? So what they would do is probably tell you a hypothetical and say, Juan created a study and he is using random sampling from his high school. What is one strength that Juan has by using random sampling? That might be a question or the way that they word the question. All right. Okay. I'm just gonna. Okay, guys. I had to go right down to the bottom because I feel like I'm missing a lot of stuff. Can you guys just write in where we're at, Jacob? I feel like you're in the chat a lot, and there's I want to make sure that I'm answering questions that you guys are asking. We know interrater. Okay. Inter-rater, inter-observer are definitely the same thing. Yes, Jacob is on a roll here. Validity is how well the experiment or data actually measured what you were looking at. So if you have controls in a study, controls are going to contribute to good validity. If you have good standardized procedures, that's what's going to contribute to good reliability. Okay. So if you are asked to design a correlational study, guys, okay, it's most likely you're going to create a two-tailed hypothesis. You're going to have at least two variables. Those are going to be your two independent variables, two groups, okay? You can have a control group if you want. But if a correlation, we're looking for some relationship between things, all right, if that makes sense. All right, so and we're not looking for A to cause B. We don't know that. A correlational study, we're looking to see what will cause what, okay? So when you have low validity in a study, we don't really know if you really measured what you intended to measure. So let's look at Milgram's study, and we're saying obedient behavior, but how you have to look at, was it really obedient behavior, or were we really just measuring how far someone would go to kill another person if given the moment? I mean, you can make up so many different things, but the fact of the matter is, what were we really controlling to know that the behavior that was happening was obedient? Like, what if someone had trauma? What if someone had PTSD? What if, there are other factors that we were not able to look at? And if we couldn't control those factors, then technically, were we really studying obedient behavior? That's just a question of validity, okay? Can I give examples of the 10-pointer? I really don't understand who, what, when, where, how. Okay, so I do have another video. I would suggest go looking at how I created a couple studies, okay? Who, what, when, where, how is, who is the population? How did you get them? Tell me all the details, the population, the sample, the ethnicity, tell me all the demographics of them. What are we studying? If it's questionnaires, tell me the questionnaires, tell me the questions, and all the types of questions. If it's observations, what are we observing? Who are our observers? What is our data going to look like? How are we going to tally it? When and where, those are really important because that have to do with controls of the study, time of day. Is it a lab experiment? Is it a field? Or we have independent measures design? And then again, we have how. Okay. How is your whole procedure? Okay. Which case study uses covert observations, if any? You can use, well, I mean, okay, this is hard because if somebody, there's a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm having brain farts. It's getting late with psychology. I don't know how you guys do it. Okay. Demand characteristics are really high in case studies. Okay. So to do an overt to do a covert observation in a case study might be rare. Okay, you might have to set it up for them to not know because they kind of know they're there. They would seek out help to be part of a case study. Okay, so having a covert observation in a case study would be probably rare. You would have to set it up so they didn't know that they were being watched. Okay. All right. Milgram used a covert observation. Yes, but it was not a case study. What is extraneous variables? Okay, so we know what confound variables are. Confound variables are variables that we think ahead of time that we can try to control for. In essence, extraneous variables are the same thing as confound variables, except we didn't think of them or we couldn't control for them or they happened naturally without us really knowing. And we kind of just talk about them at the end. That's like the easiest way to understand what extraneous variables are. Okay. What is the difference between section A and section B? Is the exam going to go over the ethical guidelines? Are there any types of extraneous variables between participants and situational? I actually haven't you know what? I haven't you're not going to have to try to, only questions I've ever had about variables were what are the benefits of controlling the variables, or they would say things like what are the disadvantages of not being able to control for variables or having extraneous variables. And again, that's all linked to validity. Are we measuring what we intended to measure? Okay, if we can't control, those variables exist, therefore validity is lower. Okay. Yep, situational is like environmental. Extraneous variables are things, yeah, extraneous variables in general. There's no okay, I never honestly thought of situational variables and extraneous variables as opposites in any way, okay? But there can be, like maybe a fire alarm goes off while you're taking the exam and you didn't know it was going to happen, okay? Just or maybe one of your participants didn't get a good night's sleep and they only got 2 hours, or maybe there can be so many factors that you don't think of that are out of your control, okay? If you decide to use random sampling in the 10-point question, are you able to say that the number of males and female participants? Yeah, I mean, you can make up whatever you like for numbers as long as it makes sense for what you're doing. Okay, you're not going to have 100 participants in a repeated measures design if that's what it calls for. All right, so just make sure that you're using, you know, a possible amount. I mean, that's also in the answer. Is it says like I mean, you're getting points for the study possibility of it being done. Is it doable? Okay. What does operationalize mean? It means to define something all the way down to the nitty gritty. Okay. If you operationalize something, it means that everyone is on board. Your definition is to the T. So, for example, if someone says, blinking, what does blinking look like? If blinking is on your data sheet and you have to check it off every time someone blinks must be, and then you have to define it to a T. Both eyes closing at the same time for less than 1 second. Okay, because what if one eye closes and the other doesn't? What if they both close for a long period of time? Is that a blink? Okay. Um, there's so many questions. So when you operationally define something, you define it down to almost too much. You define it almost too much. All right. Can you discuss how to tackle those 6-mark mini essays in paper 2? Okay. So normally, if something first, you're just going to want to look at how many points a question's worth and what they're asking of you. If they're asking you to say 2 things and it's worth 6 points, try to break your answer down into those 2 things and try to get maybe 3 sentences and 3 facts or PEE, point example explanation for each one. Okay. And that can give you 3 points and 3 points for 6. All right. Um, there's no mini essays. They just have like there's a lot of 4 and 6 point questions. Let me this paper 2. Okay. So in section A, let's see, there's a 2 point, 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 a 1 point, a 4 point, a 1 point, and a 6 point. In section B, we have a 1 point, a 1 point, a 1 point, a 2 point, 1 1 4 1 3 1 3 2 3. So there was only one 6 point question on this whole thing. And it said to define extraneous variables and uncontrolled variables. So the answer to that would be extraneous variables are those that can affect the dependent variable, but are not considered to be part of the independent variable. So, for example, the mood of a stooge might be an example of an extraneous variable. An uncontrolled variable have the potential to negatively impact the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. An example is in a sleep study, all participants were asked to not drink caffeine before bed, but the participant did eat a bowl of ice cream filled with sugar. This could affect his sleep times. So, as you see how I actually made up that last example, okay, that didn't really happen in Dement and Kleitman. I didn't read anything about it, anybody eating a bowl full of ice cream, but I just kind of made that up. All right. The difference between section A and section B is, I would say that in section A, they usually reference some study from one of the 12 studies. They might reference one of those studies and then kind of throw you some questions about operationalizing and definitions and variables and stuff like that. Where in section B, it's specifically hypothetical scenarios and questions like, for example, Dan is looking for a correlation between the amount of children's play and how aggressive they are. He is not sure whether children who play more would be more aggressive or will be less aggressive. Now, this is broken down into two sections of A, a B, and a C. Okay. The question says, suggest how play could be operationalized using a quantitative measure. Now, a good answer for 1 point, it's just 1 point. You could just put the word tally. You could say participants in an activity that is not structured by an adult or part of scholastics or to tally. Suggest one problem with measuring play. Playing may be subjective to most participants and may not fall into or may not fall into a reductionistic definition. Okay, so in section B, you're going to see a lot more hypotheticals with names of people you don't know, where in section A, it's all about research methods, but they might mention a study that you kind of have to go off of a little bit. Okay. So in a repeated measures design, an advantage off the top of my head of repeated measures design is that you do not need a lot of participants. Okay. You don't need a lot of participants at all. You can have like Dement and Kleiman had like 5 participants. If let's see. This design is best for the control of any participants because the same people do condition they're their own. The people in a repeated measures design are their own control group. They started at 0. So as they get measured over time, you're able to compare them to when they started. So a disadvantage of repeated measures design is the fact that we have possible order effects, like they might learn the way things are going. And if you kind of see like, oh, I get this, I've done this before, then their behavior might change. Okay. They might get bored or tired. They might understand the aim and impose more demand characteristics. Let's see. It's also really hard sometimes to implement a repeated measures design. So, for example, if you're doing left hand versus right hand people, it's not easy for. There's not a lot of left. People are going to you can't do a repeated measures design if your independent variable is left-handed people and right-handed people because people usually only use one or the other, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Let's see. What topic is most tested? Earlier, you mentioned correlation. Correlations and observations. I've seen, but I mean, I haven't seen a case study yet in the past couple years, so they might do case study. Case study is pretty easy. You don't need any independent variables, things like that. You can impose any questionnaires or any interviews or anything like that. You can interview parents, teachers, anything. So, okay. Let's see. Less individual differences. Okay, so for the 10-point question, does the format have to be a formula or can it be very detailed bullet points? There is no formula. I just kind of made that up for myself, for my students, something really easy to follow, okay? Because humans thrive on structure, okay? We feel safe in structure. So I just created the structure of who, what, when, where, how, variables, your controls, and your ethics, okay? You have paper 2 in 2 hours. Oh my gosh, I need to go to bed. It's 11 PM here on the 3rd. Oh, you guys are so welcome. What are the strengths and the weaknesses of all the sampling techniques? Okay, let's see what I can remember off the top of my head. All right, because this is kind of cray cray right now to ask me all those. All right. Um, opportunity. Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I can do this. My head's going crazy. I do know you always want to do random if you can, but it's always hard because it's not always easy to get everyone an equal opportunity of being part of your study. A volunteer sample, there you can get a very, very specific type of population. Like you can get 14-year-old left-handed football quarterbacks if you want. You can get 100 of them from all over the world. But a downfall is that they all have something in common, a lot in common, and there's some type of motivational bias. Now opportunity sample, they all have something in common because they're all saturated in the same area. And a problem with that is that you can't generalize the information. Whew, I did it. Okay. Yes, random is a little bit more unbiased. Okay. Opportunity is definitely convenient. Now, also, guys, just know that there are more types of sampling methods than just what we just talked about. And a majority of the studies don't just label something as an opportunity sample. They don't label it as a volunteer sample. We kind of have to give it depending on the details that we know. So if you are kind of back against the corner in a question where you possibly know the answer to, just go ahead and, give it a shot. And if it's right according to psychology, then it's very possible that you can get the points for it. And what I'm kind of talking about is something along the lines of, what type of samples or just, things like that. I mean, we need informed consent for a sample to be a sample, right? For people to be selected. All right. If they're not selected, if they don't know they're in the study, is it really a sample? I don't know. It's kind of crazy question. So, yes, unstructured interviews are questions that are presented at the time of the interview, and something that is structured is pre-made in order. Okay. Confound variables are variables that could present risk to basically your independent variable and lower your validity, but you catch them in the beginning. Okay. Are we supposed to answer the 10-point in the format who, what, when, or more like just stating features of the experiment? Do they want to see those who, what, when words? You don't have to put those words, but it's going to be easier for them to find them. It's going to be easier for them to locate a paper that is more organized instead of hunting. Okay. Like hunting, I've gone into papers and I really wanted to give them points and I just found myself in circles searching and searching for the information. Okay. So if you can structure it really well, chances are if the information's there, it's easier for them to read and see. Okay. I mean, we're just people. The graders are just humans, okay? They do the best that they can. They believe me, I don't think they go in with the intentions of wanting you to fail, but they want to hold a standard, okay, of grading and learning. Okay, what do I have to make sure to know from the 12 studies? You already did the 12 studies. So if they mention one of the studies in here, it's not going to be anything specific. It would be very broad and research methods based. Okay. Thank you. I look so pretty. You're so sweet. I'm so exhausted. Okay. Semi-structured interview is having structured and unstructured questions. Like you might have a general structured question that says, like, were you ever a martial artist? And they say yes. And then you might say, oh, please explain, or please describe your favorite moment. Okay. All right. You guys have it tomorrow morning. It's 11:21 where I am too. All right, I'm in Florida. I'm in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, not physically right now, guys. I am, I'm so grateful to have you guys here because you guys teach me about this stuff too. Like yesterday, my husband told me to tell you guys to blow up my like button. I was like, what is that? Oh, I just started teaching this stuff because I liked psychology so much. Isn't that crazy? I hope you guys. Oh, Izzy, hi. You're in Florida too. 45 minutes. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, 45 minutes. You know what? Um, if any of you guys, I really want you guys to come back and comment on these videos when you pass, because I know you will pass. Okay. Tonight before you go to bed, you just need to say to yourself, I passed my psychology exam. I passed my psychology exam. Okay. I think I did this last night. I'm going to send you guys some good luck. Receive all this good luck and good energy and a clear mind for tomorrow, right? All this good vibes and good energy, right? I want you guys to do good. You will do good. You will stay calm, right? If you find yourself blanking on anything, just go back to it. Leave it. Don't waste time thinking about it. If it doesn't come to you right away, move on, all right? You want to devote as much time as you can to that last question. You guys are so welcome. See, I guess I just have to say it so much. I gotta say it. I gotta say it. That's what my 5-year-old says. Okay. My 5-year-old asked me to make YouTube videos and she's just playing around on the phone and she's telling the phone, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Like she's just making a video. It has nothing to do with YouTube. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I gotta get in this. I gotta figure this out. So I just gotta tell you guys, just hit the like button on my videos, right? Right? It'll benefit everyone. Then I'll remake some videos and then you guys will go to college and I will find you in college and you will be like, Miss M, please help me with this concept. And I'll be like, I got a video for you, right? I will be here, guys. This world's kind of going to like this crazy place where we're going to be doing a lot of stuff online. So I'm going to be right at your fingertips. It'll be so crazy, right? Who would have thought? I'm teaching you right here from my house, right? On YouTube. Go YouTube, right? All right, guys. Do we do section C first? You can do section C first. I'm just gonna tell you, go to section C first. Write down who, what, when, where, how. Write down the word correlations, ethics. Just write it down. Then read the question. If it sparks something and you get it, start writing. If you blank and you freak out for more than a minute or 2 minutes, forget about it and go to the front and start the test that way. Okay? Don't waste time sitting there and say, oh, Miss M said we had to do that last question first. No, I just want you to read it because some of you might spark right away. Some of you are going to need a little extra time, and that's okay. Either way. Either way. And if you are on a roll on that design question, just don't go over 25 minutes. If you're going over 25 minutes, say, is it worth what I'm writing right now? Okay? Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy, Jacob, that you took this class. I feel like you were like my what do they call them? You come and help the teacher. Oh, you did really well in answering some questions for me, Jacob. I am very proud. Thank you so much. Operational definition in simpler terms. Define, it means to define a behavior or define a term. If you say the word walking, if you say every time someone walks, we are going to make a tally, you better define what walking looks like. Okay, is walking taking one step? Is it hopping on one foot? Is walking taking more than one step? Is it taking three? Okay, you need to define exactly what it is so that if 10 people read your definition, they are all going to tally walking as the same definition. You're going to get better reliability in between raters if you have a good operational definition. Okay, and plus the graders want to know what you're talking about. They want to know they want you to define what you're talking about in your study. And even your independent variables or your measurements. If you're measuring memory, how are you going to measure memory? It's probably going to be test scores, right? You're probably going to measure scores on a test. So your dependent variable is going to be scores on a test, not memory scores, if that makes sense. Okay. Teacher's assistant, Jacob, thank you. Having another brain fart here. Yes, you're my TA, Jacob. You guys did so great. I'll call you next year, Jacob, for your help for my lives. Okay, guys, we've hit the 1 hour mark. It is 11:30. I'm going to head to bed, okay? But I would love for you guys to come on here and and tell me what that question was. If you guys can remember, tell me what the design question was for that year so I can kind of start to work on it and break it down. And then I can do the question for you how I would answer it. And then you guys can kind of see how well that you did compared to my answer. Okay. If you remember anything from paper 1, 2, if you can go into any of the videos and tell me maybe the evaluation question or something like that. That way I can start working on that and I can provide you maybe some relief on how to do those. That way, you guys don't have to wait until September for your scores. If you have to wait that long, I don't know. All right, guys, have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be thinking about you so much. All right. Good luck, guys.